But this happens to be one. Actually, there's two motions here that I think they may have taken. Well, one for sure they've taken under our playbook, which is good. But specific to the motion on infrastructure, I think it's a rational motion, a bill that is being brought forward here in terms of infrastructure in New Brunswick. And it's my understanding that New Brunswick has more asphalt than per capita than most other places in the country, most other provinces in the country. And I can imagine it would be a daunting task to make sure that all of that infrastructure is properly maintained, potholes are filled, new pavement is done, and on would be no doubt a big project. And being the representative elected by the people of Fredericton Grand Lake, I can really only speak to what I know locally in my riding. And since I've been elected, I've had several meetings with the Minister of Transportation on issues around my riding, and I'm pleased to say the Minister's been great to work with. Issues that I've raised, they usually do get completed if it's reasonable and feasible to do. And I'll give you an example, Highway 10. The stretch of road that I travel every day. Many people in the Grand Lake area travel that Highway 10 into Fredericton on a daily basis. The bushes are up so high that there's been a lot of wildlife collisions. And that highway hasn't had brush cutting in close to 20 years. It's a main artery. It's not just some backwoods road. It's a main artery from Grand Lake into Fredericton. And I've had petitions signed, I've had emails, I've had phone calls about wildlife collisions on Highway 10 for the simple reason you can't see them until you're right on top of them because of all the bushes that are along the road. So I raised that with the Minister and others, and I'm pleased to say that that's going to be part of the project being done this year, that is going to be cut. The bushes are going to be cut along that highway this year, and that's all should all be part of an infrastructure plan. I guess the thing that is disheartening is that it took 20 years and you know, some serious advocating to see that happen. And that's why I have no problem supporting a 10-year plan, so that we can know year by year exactly what needs to be done and how it needs to be done and the costs associated with what needs to be done. Another issue that I have in my riding that I'm not getting movement on, that I do want to see some movement on in terms of infrastructure, of course, is the bridge in Chipman. That bridge is the main thoroughway by which the residents of Chipman can get you know, into Minto or into Fredericton. That's the main route that they take. That bridge has been down to one lane for a couple years. And I know the Chipman Bridge is not the only bridge in the province. I know there's many others that are in desperate need of repair and you know, either down to one lane or possibly closed altogether. So we need a plan. There's no debating this. We need a plan. We need a reasonable plan. And anybody that knows me and when I campaigned and what I say often is I believe in small government, I believe in low taxes, I believe in government providing good, solid, basic services. And to me, good, solid, basic services are decent roads to drive on, roads that are actually plowed in the wintertime in a reasonable time frame. People shouldn't have to drive through 2 feet of snow to get to work you know, because they couldn't get to work in the morning because the plow truck didn't go by. Those are the types of things that I believe in. What I don't believe in, especially considering our fiscal situation before the pandemic and so much more the fiscal situation once we come out of this pandemic, is simply just building new everything. Like, to me, this shouldn't be about what else can we build, more stuff that we can maintain for 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So I'm not talking about building new infrastructure. I'm talking about either maintaining the current infrastructure or replacing that current infrastructure if it's needed. So I want to be clear on my position on that. And, Madam Speaker, I do believe that the more long-term we can look in the plan, and I understand right now there's a 5-year plan through asset management that the province uses to fix roads and infrastructure, and if this can be extended to 10 years, great. You know, the longer we can look ahead. And there always has to be the understanding that a plan is like a target on the wall. It's what you aim at, it's what you direct at. From time to time, I'm sure that plan will change. And my biggest concern is that you have a 10-year plan, and governments change, parties change, and the 10-year plan, you know, gets shelved. And we get back into this political movement where it's more about politics fixing a certain area as opposed to the plan and the asset management, which should be initiated to make sure that those things are done. So yes, I think a 10-year plan is wise. I think it's reasonable and rational. I think an asset management plan as part of that is also equally good, which they currently have. And I think I want to take this opportunity as well to thank the men and women that work on the roads every year. You know, coming in here, there's of course potholes being filled and some asphalt being laid on the highway coming in, and you know, I try as much as possible without interrupting their day of work, but just to, you know, say thanks. I mean, you know, some days in the middle of July and August in the heat of the summer, pouring asphalt can be hot and flies and everything that goes with it. It can be a tough job, and I just appreciate what they do. And I think, you know, when we talk about infrastructure as a whole, giving those people those jobs in the peak season is important. And I do believe in times of economic downturn like we're seeing, there can be some strategic investments done. And again, getting back to the bridge in Chipman, I've had letters from the mill in Chipman, which is talking about significant economic impact because that bridge is down to one lane. I've talked to the fire chief in Chipman that talks about emergency services. They have to stop at a red light with their sirens going simply because that bridge is down to one lane. So there's an emergency services issue. There's an economic issue with that bridge being down to one lane. There's a residence inconvenience of an issue with the bridge being down the lane. And again, I speak of the Chipman Bridge, but I know there's other bridges around the province. We all know that are not being repaired properly and adequately. And again, to make my position clear, I don't believe in taking federal money, combining it with provincial money to build new and luxurious infrastructure, because New Brunswick clearly can't afford more and new infrastructure. But what I do believe is partnering with the federal government, especially at a time when they're offering the money, to find ways to repair the infrastructure we have and to make sure that it's maintained, because putting it off doesn't change the fact that that infrastructure has to be repaired. You know, and I've had this discussions, if a bridge is down to one lane, whether it's fixed this year or 4 years down the road, matter of fact, the opposite, it may cost more 4 years down the road because there could be more degradation to the bridge as time goes on. So I do think we have to look at this strategically and say, you know, we have to get our infrastructure up in place, especially key points of infrastructure. I know the Coles Island bridges, and that's not my writing, but that was years down to one lane. And anybody that lives in that area drove on those bridges, you know what I mean. I've driven on dirt roads in the middle of the woods that had better surface than those bridges had in Coles Island. And this is successive governments, you know, equal share of blame on that. So we do have to have we do have to have a plan. We have to have some thought, some strategy into how we are going to maintain our infrastructure. And a 10-year plan, again, I think is rational. I see no reason why I can't support this. And I think if the opposition continues to put these types of motions forward, we could see more support on some of these issues that are raised. I know there's another one coming out about the double taxation, and everybody should know where I stand on that. But yes, so 10-year plan on infrastructure I would certainly support, And again, I just want to urge the government, and this, again, this is no slight on the Minister of Transportation, because I will say publicly he's been great to work with, government's been great to work with projects that are needed, you know, that reasonably need to be done. But some of these bigger projects, we do need movement on it, and I hope that as part of the 10-year plan, you know, that this is part of that movement going forward, I guess, in some of the infrastructure that needs to be repaired. So with all that said, I will be supporting this that has been brought forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.